sample sizing. You want to take a decision on a population, you have to have the metrics from a sample size. And that sample size has to be representative of the entire population. At the time we locked down, we hadn't done 5,000 tests in a population of 200 million. So whatever decision we took, a coin and said, you know what, 50-50 chance that we get it right because you're locking down or not. So might as well toss a coin. So that decision to lock down, in my opinion, was a bit too early. It's like hearing that there's a terrorist in a shopping mall, right? And then what you do is drop an atomic bomb on the shopping mall. You didn't check how many terrorists, what type of gun. Does he have a machine gun? Does he have a revolver? How many people are there? Is the collateral damage larger than the impact of this test? And sometimes you have to take a hard decision and say, if we flood this mall, worst case scenario, we will lose 6 people. If we drop an atomic bomb, we lose everybody at the city. So that's what locking down did, in my opinion. You lock down a very fragile economy for 1 month. When I say locking down the economy, we locked down Lagos and Abuja. That's 70% of Nigeria's economy. We locked it down for 1 month. A fragile economy, barely getting out of the recession. We have a 54% youth underemployment and unemployment rate. Yes, so we're not. I don't think that decision was taken at the appropriate time. We should have attempted doing social distancing, enforcing social distancing, enforcing mask wearing, enforcing hygiene. And then doing massive testing to see where's the concentration of the illness. Is it spreading? Is it being contained? Without all of those things, I think the lockdown was drastic. It was panic-driven. And now we are forced to open the economy when the illness, the state of the virus spread is worse than when we locked down.
Interesting view about the lockdown. But looking at... Did you get that? Yes, I got that. But looking at this reopening process now and the fact that, yes, our economy has a huge informal sector, daily wage workers who want things to start happening. The stages of reopening, what do you have to say about it at this point?
We box ourselves into a corner as we do very often. There's only lockdown has a massive economic and socioeconomic cost, right? So if you can't afford it, you can't sustain it, and we can't afford it. But what we've done now, in terms of gradually opening up, we've done what I think we should have done a month ago. Yeah, open up the economy a little, let the crucial sectors work, let people go to work on certain conditions. We must enforce that everybody wears a mask, right? Enforce that, ensure that in the public places you have water, even though that is a different issue because people don't have water at home. I don't know how we want to put water in public places, but ensure that sanitization is at the hygiene and sanitization is at the highest level possible. Ensure that people go out to mask, ensure that people maintain social distancing, reduce unnecessary interactions. And these things have to be enforced. So what we've done now is what we ought to do. The question is, are we able to enforce it? It's not just proclaiming what should happen, it's ensuring and enforcing that what should happen is actually what happens.
Okay. Are we able to enforce this process? But when we look at the period of the lockdown and the assessing of palliatives to ensure that those critical mass who are in the informal sector receive some succor during the period, the federal government is working through the Economic Sustainability Committee chaired by the Vice President to see how they can continue to support those in the daily wage working space and even state governments. What would you like to see happen more in that space in terms of reaching out to this critical mass? Even the World Bank has raised the concerns too, and the IMF.
It's a very valid concern. Dealing with the informal sector is very difficult, and that's why it's called informal. Getting required data to take decisions is not very easy. I don't know if it's on, I'm sure I've said this on your program a few years ago. Our government does not have citizen accountability, i.e., how many citizens do we have? We have this estimate of 200 million based on the census done 20 years, 30, almost 30 years ago or 20 years ago. But where are these citizens? We don't have citizen accountability. We don't have a database of citizens. So if you want to reach the electrician that Zeal uses, who does not have a BVN, how do you reach him? And if he is in a situation of distress where his income comes from people like Zeal calling him, come and fix this in my house, and now there's no movement. So in 1 month, he has earned nothing. He does not have a BVN. How does the government reach him? So we need to, for these palliatives to work, there is a foundation on which social intervention sits, and that's citizen accountability. We must know the people that are vulnerable. We must know who they are, why they are vulnerable, and how to reach them. In the absence of that, we are shooting in the dark. There are people who I'm hoping, I don't, thank God I don't need a palliative, but the people who need, I don't know if they got it. I'm assuming a lot of people have gotten it. But are they the most important to get? And we're in Lagos, so the number of people that are classified as so vulnerable as needing palliatives will be far less in an urban area than a rural area. When I say rural, I'm not rural within Lagos. I'm not talking about outside Lagos now. But how do we reach those people? And also, as much as it's needed, they need it. But we also need to remember, before COVID-19, we had vulnerable people in the country who could not survive. We didn't think of palliatives for them then. The government is well aware of this, which is why the trader money scheme was instituted. But where is that today? That is the type of scheme that should have been reenacted in this period. It has a massive cost, which is part of why a lockdown cannot be sustained for a long time. But these are the kind of things that ought to be done, but it needs to be done in a systematic manner, not randomly. And I'm hoping we have the database of these vulnerable people, that we can reach them even after this, because a lot of these people are not vulnerable because of COVID-19. They are vulnerable because of the state of the economy. The state of the economy is going to be the state of the economy after COVID-19, and possibly even worse. How do we reach them after COVID-19? So those are the things that cross my mind. Palliatives are needed, but palliatives need to be sustained and transformed into jobs. You can't be doling out cash all the time. Why are these people unemployed? Why do they live from hand to mouth? Why don't they have regular jobs? Those are the real solutions we need to work on that COVID-19 has brought to the fore. And I'm hoping we can concentrate on dealing with the root issues that make them vulnerable and not just giving them cash.
Okay, Zeal, I will bring, but I just want to mention something which is of concern to you and Bosun, because you've been banking sector. Bosun covers the financial market extensively. The central bank and the bankers committee, they met over the weekend. There have been concerns about laying off of workers in the banking sector as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic crisis, the challenges. Globally, we're seeing people cutting down costs and even downsizing. They've agreed to, for now, put a hold on layoffs, and if that need arises, the central bank should be notified to really look at intervening in that regard. What are your thoughts around this?
Well, that's a very difficult question, because it's a two-edged sword. On the one side, there's the humanitarian and the empathetic side, where people losing their jobs is something that's not good. There's the other side of, you're running a business that cannot afford to keep people anymore. So it's a very difficult situation to be placed in, where you're told, irrespective of the business environment, you cannot cut costs in this manner. There are not many ways a bank can cut costs. However, on the flip side, in my opinion, we're just in May. A lot of banks have just released their 2019 financials. A lot of banks there is a bank I heard that wants to cut salaries and all of that. And I'm wondering, if a bank made, for argument's sake, 9 billion in profit after tax for 2019 and has a monthly wage bill of 6 billion, right? I'm struggling to understand how one bad month means you have to cut costs so drastically. I'm struggling to understand that. But it's all, I remember, like I said, quarter 3 treatment and unemployment in the youth bracket of 15 to 35 was over 50%. I'm not sure our economy can withstand tossing more people into that bracket. It's a very dicey one. What we ought to do is, and whether we like it or not, on one hand, Lagos State says you should have 60% complement of staff. I don't know how they came about that figure, but the bottom line is, if you're non-essential, I don't have to be at work, do not be at work. And yet you're saying, keep paying them the full salary, keep a full complement of staff. But don't keep a full complement of staff. It's a two-edged sword. It's going to be very difficult for a lot of entities to adhere to that. But again, I also understand that the central bank is trying to make sure that jobs are not lost. But for how long will this last? How can it stay that? And don't forget, in the banking sector, in the entire country, we don't have 200,000 bankers. I'm very certain of that. So that's not where the key thing is. The flour industry, for example, direct and indirect, would be employing maybe 5 to 7 million people. The banking sector does less than 200,000. Yeah. So it's going to be a tough one.
Okay. Let me bring in Bosun here, make your reactions and your views about the sector concerns, jobs and layoffs.
Well, I appreciate.
Yes, I can hear you. I'm bringing Bosun into the conversation now.
Yeah, Zeal has provided.
Yes, we can hear you.
A lot of food for thought in his presentations, and I agree with quite a lot of what.
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
What he said.
Yeah.
If we start from the banking sector. Banking sector in every country is very fragile and peculiar in nature. So if you lay off one single staff in the banking sector,
okay,
and you lay off 100 in the services or industrial sector, for example, the way it will resonate will be different. Banks are typically just glass houses, okay? Yeah. So banks are just glass houses. They're not made of much of brick and mortar. So we need to be careful. The number of workers in the banking sector may be much lower than in telecommunications or food, FMCG, but then it's not the same thing. If you lay off 100 bank workers, where are the chances of, where do they go? And I've tracked this since 1994 when we had the failed banks decree. If you lay off 100 people in the FMCG, the likelihood that from flour mills to Honeywell to maybe Dangote flour, that they will set up maybe a bakery or go work in a bakery or in a pastry business is more likely because they have a bit of a hands-on on that, okay? Or they'll start. But in the banks, what venture do you expect the banker to set up? He doesn't have 25 billion to buy a license from the central bank to start a bank. Yes. The industry is tight. There are fewer banks in Nigeria than, like we all know, so where do you go? So it becomes an issue. Again, when you're trying to measure the health of an economy, the banking sector becomes one of the first place to begin to measure how healthy is the economy, because the transmission mechanism for everything that we do. So since we are not doing the trade by barter of centuries of ore, then what we now do is that everything has to pass through the banking sector. So one single person out of that sends a serious signal to foreign investors, to portfolio investors, to foreign direct investors, to those who trade the markets and financial markets and everything. And you find a whole lot of problems coming through because of one single bank. So if you remove the MD of a bank, it's not as the same as removing the MD of a fast-moving consumer goods. It's not the same thing. The way the market receives it will be different. So banks are very, very fragile, and the sensitivities around them should also be considered. So to my mind, that would perhaps inform the stepping in by the central bank and call all the bank CEOs to an emergency meeting over the weekend and say, hey guys, what can we do? Through some measure of moral suasion perhaps, and perhaps some other undisclosed strategies of how to deal with it moving forward. But based on what I am aware of, Access perhaps could have done some of the branches rationalization last year when the merger with the Diamond Bank. Perhaps they were because they were a little bit ambitious and want to appear, quote unquote, like the big boy, and I don't blame them. Banks around the world do behave in certain similar manner that, look, we want to show that we can carry this and we want to extract value in first. Now, having extract some values from Diamond Bank and now see the reality of the day and looking at pandemic as some folks are saying, perhaps we're in this for about 2 years to come, right? So then it's good for them to quickly sit on the table through a business continuity plan and take a bit of a mid to long-term view of keeping these branches, which they hitherto were using for. Remember, when they came in, Access Bank, at least as of today, maybe before the pandemic, I don't know, has the largest bank by branch number in the country, one of the largest also on the continent. So it's all there in the numbers. So the numbers look good. The market was receptive. Last year we had a few listings, okay, MTN, Airtel Africa, a few others. The market was coming back. So I agree with perhaps the thinking by Access Bank team back then was that they can ride that along. But now there's a problem and they have to deal with it. I appreciate what they have done. I appreciate what the central bank also have done by stepping in and try to be the midwife that it ought to be. But again, going back to Zeal's earlier comments about the job market. You see, the informal economy, we are turning palliatives to become a state policy of economic management. And the earlier we make it an exception rather than the rule, the better for us. We're beginning to love palliatives, from Better Life for Rural Women to MAMSA we're beginning to love palliatives, SureP, PTF, this and that. We're beginning to love it. And it looks like our policymakers and leaders are beginning to lean that as long as you give palliatives to the people, they will always be there for the next election and make you look good. And that is becoming now an official policy of the state of Nigeria. That's where the big problem is for me as a journalist. That we need to move more people out of the informal economy into the formal economy so that their life could have meaning and traction, and we'll be able to track everybody. Okay, and the government will be able to even earn more in terms of tax and other things. People can have pensions and plan their life much better and have a meaningful life. But as long as we believe that palliatives is the way, so keep the majority of Nigerians under a palliative umbrella, while the formal economy remains very small outside that. And that is why it's becoming difficult for us, one, to have an agreeable population, or census, whatever you want to call it. Then it's difficult for us to even track people under this pandemic. It's difficult for us to do testing because you don't know whether Boston is in Yanakwaja today or what he's going to do in Egbeda tomorrow. You can't find his home address. He's sleeping here today. He's not sleeping there tomorrow. So he has to fix address one way or the other because as the spirit directs, looking for his bread, looking for where to hustle. So tomorrow is in Aspanda, and the next day is in Isaleko. From Isaleko, it moves to Abule Egba, Okoba. You can't market it just trying to find a daily bread. So you can't track your citizens. You don't even know where they are. So it's difficult to do security very well. Now we have a pandemic that you can't tell which carrier, who is where. Now this morning, everybody's on the road. Everybody is on the road. There are traffic log jams everywhere. Bank branches, either opening or not opening, are all besieged because folks need to have their daily bread and have it now. So whether we lock it now, we can't lock down anymore. But I will appeal to everyone very quickly that the government should try the communications to be better. Those, and I agree with Zeal, those who don't have to be at work, please do us a favor, stay away so that we can reduce the footprint. Those who are out through the informal economy, please use the face masks, wash your hands, do all the sanitation and hygiene and what have you. Again, this pandemic is not the problem really. It is the economy that is getting people more scared. Because before the pandemic, like Zeal said, the economy was going to ground zero. Unemployment was going this way. Yeah. We're pushing out more university graduates than we can employ. I saw some data over the weekend from one of the states in the north that has about 500,000 mosques and has less than 60 factories in the state. Yeah. Before Fashola left Lagos State as a governor, and one of the things he lamented about, and which anyone can Google, was that he said for most of the C of O that he signed, he said he was signing on a daily basis more C of O's, certificate of occupancies, for religious places than for factories. And I remember what Fashola said in that report. He said, how do we grow an economy in Lagos State that almost all the C of O's papers brought before him to sign belong to religious places, church and mosques? And nobody's bringing C of O for factories. The same thing was in Ogun State.
Okay, Zeal wants to come in.
Please
Zeal,
help me out here.
I can't see Bosun though.
Okay, Bosun.
Okay.
You can see.
I think my director will just, the director will bring me on
He's
screen.
calling you now, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, just wanted to be sure.
Okay, so Zeal, you want to come in now? Yeah, he's made some very key points. Bosun.
Yes, and I want to add something to what he said.
Okay.
And, when we're
Talking about this pandemic, the virus. The virus is spread in a particular manner, and the most efficient way to curb it is hygiene, right? And then distancing. We need to understand it's a communicable disease. If you look at the developing countries, of which Nigeria is, if you look at the top 10 causes of death in developing countries, 7 of the 10 of them are communicable diseases.
Yes, very correct.
In the Western world, only 1 of their top 10 is a communicable disease. So we need to understand that, in my opinion, if we handle this properly, this illness is helping us to focus on the things we ought to focus on. Because when there was, I was telling someone the other day, he was shocked. And I said, between malaria and tuberculosis combined, we lose 30 lives in Nigeria every hour. That's what those 2 kill every hour. So COVID has killed maybe 80 people in 2 months or 3 months, but a combination of malaria, I'm bringing it up, malaria is caused by bad sanitation, bad drainages. Tuberculosis is similar. We lose 30 people an hour. I don't want to go into cholera and dysentery. I don't want to go into the epidemics we have of Lassa fever and yellow fever. So we need to understand that our COVID is exposing a problem. COVID in itself is not the problem. COVID is exposing a problem of, 1, the fragility and vulnerability of our economy, that 1 month we're already in serious distress. It's showing that we do not have citizen accountability. We don't know where people are, so we cannot account for them for security reasons, for palliative reasons, for intervention. We do not have adequate health infrastructure. 1 month of one pandemic, our hospitals are already overwhelmed. We do not have an economy that can sustain. So this thing is exposing a lot of things that we need to deal with. It would be an utter waste for COVID to come and go, and we have not dealt with these underlying issues.
More environmental planning.
This is it. Because if you talk about cholera, malaria, tuberculosis, all these communicable diseases, or Lassa fever, because we breed a lot of rats. Because, again, most of our meals in this part of the world are solid wastes. Yeah. And rats love solid wastes. So whether it is banana peel or yam or whatever that we peel, and we peel a lot. And so we eat a lot of agri products. Yeah. And rats love that. So Lassa fever is around. And the drainages, where are they? Who's keeping the drainages? The local governments are almost non-existent. Who is keeping our solid wastes? We remember not too long ago when Lagos was totally covered by solid wastes. Yeah. So we ought to have had a virus like coronavirus long ago. In fact, there was so much noise last year on the Sanwo-Olu's administration. What is he doing when there was a transition between Ambodi's administration and his, the first issue everybody in Lagos was talking about were the waste management and the roads. Yeah. Now, the waste management alone was enough to have given us something like a coronavirus that could have killed hundreds or thousands of us. Yeah. So we had an underlying problem with our urban planning, with city planning. There's nothing like planning anymore. I don't know what our planning department or planning whatever units or regional planning, whatever, under the various states, government. I don't know where they are anymore. Yeah. We just don't. So in terms of, now we have, see, the rains have started in Lagos, for example. So the drainages are going to start getting blocked, right? Where do they all flow to? There's a problem. So you're going to have a problem coming through because it's going to be raining almost every day. So we have environmental issues. Then we now have that combined with everybody just build the way they like, and we all throw whatever waste with the way we want. We got a lot of advice. So this, I agree with Zeal, reveals that we need to get our primary health care right, and we need to get the government to begin to get us to plan to know who lives what. If not that, I'm not sure if it was somebody or Babatule who started renaming of streets in Lagos State to also know what is your street, what is your number, and what have you. Great job done by I think by today Raji Fashola administration back then, in terms of people knowing. You don't even have an idea. So how do you account for, how do you treat what you can't count? You must be able to count first. Look, I'm sorry, but even those who have many kids, you have so many children and name them. You should be able to name them. But again, back to the palliatives, and I'm going to keep talking about palliatives. Palliatives are just a one-off thing. The earlier we get back to serious economic planning, and I will say it all over again, like a broken record, need to take more people out of the informal economy to the formal economy. Banking sector will not do it alone. We need to get industrial manufacturing. I grew up to know that on a typical day like today, 6 to 7 people that you meet on the road are going to work in a factory. Today, 8 or 10 out of people you meet on the road are providing services to nobody and to no one. So we've moved from industrial manufacturing-based to service-based economy, which is not dollar denominated or dollar inflow, but naira. These days, everybody's going to one place or the other. We need to find a way back in which every average person you see on the road between 6, 7 a.m. or on a train or in a bus is going to a factory or a manufacturing concern to work. Rather than everybody's trying to open his own barber shop. I think we have enough barber shop already. I think we have enough hairdressing salons. I'm sorry, with due respect, but I think we have enough already. We can do more with factories. Because if you start laying off folks from the financial services like banking, where do they go? The informal economy, and I said this before, quite some time ago on my Twitter handle, look, once the Nigerian government or the authorities allow the informal economy to become weak, then we're in for a very serious problem that we've never had in this country since the Civil War. Because the backbone of this economy is the informal economy. When thousands were laid off in Oceanic, Intercontinental, PHB, and the rest of them, the informal economy sector absorbed them. Those who were laid off years ago during the finance houses and mortgage houses and discount houses and the boom in stockbroking firms were all absorbed in the informal economy. Now the informal economy is breaking up because the formal economy is not helping. And the last straw to break the camel's back is the oil industry that is now into total chaos or collapse. Now, I can't find it. I'm trying to find where the inflow into the informal economy will come from. The last 4 or 5 years, we've done so much on anti-corruption. Houses, hotels, whatever businesses, airlines, whatever are seized due to corrupt practices. So we lock down multi-billion assets between land and other property. So people were already finding it difficult to find their daily bread. Now that we have this oil collapse now, I don't know where the informal sector will be able to find that whatever. Because for every big man's house, you have about 10 people employed. He has a car, he has a gardener, he has a male and female, A house help because madam may not like the boy, or guy may not like the girl, whichever way, for obvious reasons. So you have 4, 5, 6 people. So where would they get job moving forward?
It's a serious.
And they are in the informal sector of the economy. So what is that? Where would they get the feed? Where's the pipeline? So once we allow the informal economy becomes weak, now that the central bank is scared for one bank to lay off, that means that they can see the numbers and they know what it will mean. If you let out the single opening, the job markets will become a total, and we can't handle it.
Wow. Now, Zeal, you know, the issue of policy options are very critical for us post-COVID-19. The Economic Sustainability Committee, chaired by the Vice President, has been looking at areas to really reposition the economy because, you know, we have, like Mr. Boson said, an informal sector that drives the economy, and if it's weakened, we face a crisis. So we've heard him over the weekend talk about supporting MSMEs, looking at improving agriculture, looking at utilizing local resources, looking at job creation. What would you like to be the key policy thrust for the Economic Sustainability Committee and the post-COVID-19 plan for Nigeria's economy?
Well, I think, to be honest, I think Boson has answered that. the thing is, an economy sits on something, right? And that something for us cannot be services, given our population. Like I say this all the time, COVID-19 is helping us expose the things we have tried to bury under the rug. Whether we like it or not, one of the key issues with our economy that affects literally everything from job creation to our current account balances, to our balance of payments, to our foreign reserves, to our foreign exchange earnings, is the fact that we have what I call an inverted pyramid. We're trying to balance the economy on an inverted pyramid. We have raw materials in abundance, all right? So for example, let's take oil. You know, oil is used for only one thing in this whole world. Anybody buying oil is using it for one thing. You know what that thing is? To refine. That's the only thing oil is used for. It is the product of the refinery that has the real value. Oil will only enter a refinery. What comes out from the refinery goes everywhere. So the process of transforming oil into petrochemicals and other chemicals is where the value is created. That's where the jobs are created. And so when we as an economy get into the habit of rent seeking and taking raw materials, exporting low value raw materials, and then turning around to import high value processed and finished goods, what we've done is not just the raw material we've exported. We've exported our ability to earn foreign exchange. We've exported employment. We've exported all the value chain along that. So whatever we're doing now, again, like Boson said, we are too happy with palliatives. We are too happy to deal with the immediate problem, the short-term solution. We are not disciplined enough to say, okay, you know what? We have a problem. We need to deal with it in the short term. But how about the medium and the long term? Medium and long term, we need to go back to processing, to manufacturing. I cannot see any other way out of any economic or financial or structural issue Nigeria has. We need to go back there. We cannot go back there without sorting out power, because to manufacture and to process, you need power. Those sectors also need a massive amount of long-term funding and discipline, fiscal, financial discipline. Those sectors need to be empowered and equipped with human resources that are proper. If we don't sort out the educational sector, we don't sort out the power sector, we don't sort out the banking sector to have long-term vision, we are going to keep dealing with issues on a 3-month basis, and our entire existence will be a threat. We need to go back to the basics. We have raw materials. The value in the raw material is in processing it. So whether we export oil and import petrol, and we say that is sectoral, it's not sectoral. We say, let's diversify to agric. But what are we doing in agric? We are exporting cocoa, raw material, and importing chocolate. We're exporting tomatoes and importing tin tomatoes. We're exporting cassava and importing ethanol. So whether you look at it as diversification or not, the issue is we are not adding value to anything we extract from our ground.
And it makes sense.
Diversification is not for the diversification's sake as it appears in the textbook.
Yeah.
It's about what value you're adding. You see, we love moving from one extreme far right to the far left without trying to understand what exactly are we doing it. If you are diversifying, for example, yes, you need to earn foreign exchange. That is good. But do you want to earn foreign exchange only on the raw materials that you continue to export, in which you are creating jobs outside the country, you are pushing your values overseas and just earning the FX? Hold on a second. That will come back home here and distribute to folks who are going on pilgrimages. Excuse me. One of the commissions or the MDAs, whatever, that should be sacked or that should be shut down are the pilgrimages commission across the country.
We're going to push that on the report.
You just need to. That's the first one that should be pushed. But it should be no concession in FX, or no state government should sponsor anybody going to any pilgrimage of any nature. Can you please sponsor small and business enterprises people to China, to Germany, to learn the best practices? Can we take our folks who are doing fashion and textile in Nigeria to Taiwan, to Bangladesh, or to India to learn how to sew better? Why are we funding those who are going to pilgrimage and just carrying some religious books? Excuse me. No, that should come to an end, a total end in year 2020. I've not seen any state government that organized, or federal government, or under SMIDA, or ITF, Industrial Training Fund, and said, look, we're taking 200, a mix of Nigerian business entrepreneurs. We're giving them a 1 week or 30-day
maybe Japan,
industrial
US,
training in
anywhere.
Japan, in South Korea. It hasn't happened in my entire life. I haven't seen it. But every month, every time we have Hajj, or people are going to Jerusalem, you're having Jerusalem pilgrimage people, everybody's getting the best of money and FX. It becomes a racket between the local government chairman, the KBACs, everybody else is there, the state government using it for whatever. We don't enhance, we're just paying lip service to these MSMEs or whatever. There are places where you can enhance the MSMEs in Nigeria are not producing quality rice. Have you shown them where quality rice is being produced? Have we taken 100 or 1,000 of our farmers to Singapore or Malaysia, whatever, to see how to produce our Thailand, to see how rice are best processed, and help them to bring back small equipment that will help them to produce better rice or to produce better juice? We have not done that, but we have a commission for Hajj. We have commission for Christian pilgrimage. That must come to an end. We need to have pilgrimage for small business owners, MSMEs, artisans. How do they become better plumbers? How do they become better craftsmen? How do they become better people at laying tiles or terrazzo, whatever? We don't give them skills. So if we have so much money to give to those who want to go on pilgrimages or religious trips, how come we don't have the same commission to take people who are hardworking, intelligent, creative, innovative Nigerians out of this country? Has the government ever organized anything for people who are producing music or movies in Nigeria to say, we're taking you to Hollywood for 30 days to learn how to produce Nigerian movies better? These guys have to learn everything by themselves and fund it themselves to where they are today. So we've wasted so much foreign currency by selling crude oil and by selling cocoa and whatever in raw material. When the money comes in, we give it out to those who are going on pilgrimages.
So in few minutes, Mr. Zeal, he's mentioned a very critical area. And you know that forex management is very key in this period for the central bank. Yeah. And even the vice president talked about the issue of the supply side, that they need to look at productivity. So what would you be saying concerning forex management going forward and business concerns for the CBN? We also hear the IMF talk about unification, re-emphasizing the need for unification of the FX rates, and even looking at the restrictions to 41 plus items.
Well, you see, a couple of years ago, I would say what here, let people not figure out how old I am. Before our JSS or GCE, we did mock exam, right? Mock basically come and test your preparedness for the real thing.
Yes.
So what one of the most painful circumstances you find yourself is where you take a mock exam and you fail, right? And then in the real exam, they ask you the same questions and then you fail again. I don't think there's anything more painful than that. In 2015, 2016, as a country, as an economy, we did a mock exam. Oil prices crashed, reserves crashed. We were in a bad position. States couldn't pay salaries. We needed to bail them out. But luckily, that recession ended quickly. You would think that we would have used the last 2 to 3 years to ensure that all the things we did wrong then, or all the things that led to that kind of crisis taking us by surprise, we would have taken care of it. But look at us 4 years down the line. We're back to the same position again, because the country has refused, for whatever reason, we've refused to take prudent action to preserve ourselves. We're in self-destruct mode. In 2014, and I say this, and Otabasi, you are very aware, personally, I presented something to the federal government on how to ensure that oil price volatility does not affect our earnings. Take a hedge on oil. They didn't do it. In 2018, I presented it again. They didn't do it. In 2019, I presented it again. They didn't do it. So no matter what, I do not believe that as an economy, we have a vested interest in our own future, because our decision makers have not taken decisions that will sustain us in the long term. If after 1 or 2 months of turmoil, the whole country has to borrow to exist, that does not sound like prudent management. And I do not think those who are managing the economy are thinking beyond a 3 to 6 month cycle. We're not a going concern like a company, but we must assume we will exist for generations. We must plan not just for our lives, not just for our children's lives, but for 3, 4, 5 generations after that. We must be making 20 to 50-year plans. I'm not even convinced that we're making 20-week plans. So the situation we find ourselves, we have no choice but to borrow. Our sovereign wealth fund, our excess crude accounts, all those things have been zeroized. And the painful part is they've been zeroized on what I consider to be recurrent expenditure. You will think that we would take our natural resources and use that for capital expenditure, and then ramp up our tax collections and use that for recurrent. But what are we doing? We're using capital assets to fund recurrent expenditure. Anybody that knows any basic about finance knows that's disaster waiting. It's just a matter of time. So what the central bank ought to do in a crisis, unfortunately, is crisis management. I don't like talking about that. I'd like to say we will get out of this. I mean, we have no choice. We'll get out of it. But what are we going to do to ensure that this does not happen again? That is the type of thinking. We have a crisis now. We should have 3 teams of people. One team dealing with how do we provide foreign exchange for the country for the next 6 to 12 months to make sure business goes on. Another team will be saying, how do we have long-term vision so that we can generate enough foreign exchange from 12 months to the next 5 years in such a manner that we can fund everything we need. Another team will be talking, you understand? So we have different teams focusing on different things. So we have no choice. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
Yes.
I love it.
I love
I
it.
just find it very... I'm trying to wrap my head around how we fix this. Look, within the last 4 or 5 years, we've had some governors that have gone building statues, okay, very huge statues at the state capitol across whatever. And where does that money come from? It comes from accretion from oil. That's our crude oil money. So it's not a laughing matter. If a state governor decides to be building a statue of himself, his wife, his house help, and his in-laws and everywhere, that money is coming from FAC, right? The federal allocation, and it's coming from oil primarily and from VAT. That's what someone is spending. Then the next governor goes and build one big stadium, another one build one big hospital. So we have a lot of projects, gigantic projects that all come from FAC. Hold on, just about 2 years ago, I'm sorry, Mr. Zeal, for just a second. Just about 2 years ago, when Kemi Adeosun was still the finance minister, the commissioners of finance for 36 states refused to leave Abuja because the money on the table was not enough. Then they asked the NNPC to bring additional 20 or 40 billion to add to it to share. which means as late as 2 years ago, the state governors or the state governments or the subnationals had not seen any need to learn from the 2015-2016 issue. And there's a need to build fiscal buffers rather than just going on a spending spree. All of them got locked up in Abuja hotels and they said they're not going anywhere until NNPC bring more money. And NNPC managing said, we don't have enough money to put on the table. And they had to force the hand of NNPC to share. That because this money on the table is not enough. Hold on a second. That's where we found ourselves today. So how do we, I think the most important, and I love Zeal's suggestion, but where do we find the political will and the political discipline or restructuring?
Political will, political
yes, that will stop and make it impossible for certain subnationals or state governors to start building waterfalls across the state, or just believe that that's what he wants, or creating ministries that has no value to wealth creation and building people out of poverty. I don't know how we're going to, because the issues sometimes start from the federal. I will talk about federal. But what about the state government? Because once you share the fact, the money disappears. And the IGR also disappears. So you can't pay state workers, you can't pay workers, you can't build good roads, you're not creating factories, no job, as it were. Yet, you are seeing white elephant projects all over the place that does not connect to the people.
So let's take it as your closing thoughts, Mr. Zeal. Your closing thoughts.
Sorry?
Let's take this as your closing thoughts, yes.
My closing thoughts, I'll conclude by saying something that Bosun touched on.
Okay.
Bosun touched on something crucial, right?
And that is something we need to revisit. When I speak of restructuring, I'm not talking about restructuring the states and geopolitical zones like most people are. We need to restructure our fiscal policy. So in the 60s, when a state generates any raw material and exports it, the excise duty goes 100% to the state, which meant that there was a direct benefit from the state by investing in extracting raw materials for export. But over the last 40 years, due to very many reasons, there's no time to go into all the detail, you see that excise duty has gone from 100% to the state to 70-30 to 50-50 to 100% to the federal government. So when you look at it now, look at VAT. VAT is shared. No matter how you developed your local economy to generate sales, you will share that money with somebody else who has done nothing. So if you look at it from that perspective, we are rewarding inactivity and penalizing activity. So a state that decides to do something and export it, the state does not get any benefit. The federal government does. A state that does nothing will benefit from those doing something. So you see, when I say we have turned things upside down, we're trying to balance a pyramid on its tip. We are rewarding states that do not do anything and penalizing states that are doing something. And then our electoral process does not allow us bring up the best. So what do you think will happen? You have people who are short-term minded, who believe that they can do stuff by doing, they can get ahead by doing nothing, who have not demonstrated any amount of excellence in their personal lives, and then we put those people in leadership positions. We need to rethink the whole thing. Look at how Lagos State Commissioner of Health and the head of NCDC has handled this. You can tell these are core professionals. You can tell the quality from the output. But look at some other places. You are wondering, how on earth did this person get here? So we have great people, and we just have to make sure that these people are equipped and empowered to make the decisions we need. We need to revisit our fiscal policy and ensure that the states that work and invest in themselves reap the benefits, and those that do not are penalized.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Zeal Akaraiwe.
Thank you, Blaque,
for your very
decisive contributions today. Of course, we need to restructure our fiscal organization as a country to move forward, even post-COVID-19. You know, when you have Mr. Zeal Akaraiwe and Mr. Bosun Omofaye, you expect to have a serious fireworks in terms of conversation on the economy and financial markets. Thank you once again, Mr. Zeal Akaraiwe, for the time. It was nice having you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bosun Omofaye.
Thank you. Thank you. My
Special
pleasure.
guest anchor and CEO
Thank you.
of Africa Reports.
Thank you. Have a great week.
Nice go, yes. And so that was the conversation on the health and economy of Nigeria as we begin to see the COVID-19 lockdown easing. We had Mr. Zeal Akaraiwe, CEO Graeme Blaque, who gave his insights, and also in our studio, Mr. Bosun Omofaye, CEO of Frontier Africa Reports. as a special co-guest anchor. You can go onto our website, www.proshareng.com, to get news, reports, analysis, and stories in this period. Also, we've designed a very special platform, the Corona Central Watch from ProShare. All you need to do is to log on to www.proshareng.com/COVID-19, and you can get the state, world, and even the national tracker on COVID-19 and how it's impacting the economy. Till we come your way again, thank you for watching. Have a nice day and stay safe.